Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our presentation on the available format features on the proposal, client invoice, and purchase and work order documents in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration today. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC. And here you can see a complete listing of all sorts of topics, including our quick start videos, short helpful tutorials, and all of our comprehensive webinars, which we categorize into our project management courses, accounting courses, and our weekly webinars as well. Okay, as I said, today's discussion is going to be focusing primarily on the aesthetic changes available on the primary documents in Design Manager, and is really focused a bit more to new users so that one can easily get the desired appearance configured on your proposal, purchase and work order, client invoices, etc., so you can get right to work. Much of the initial configuration for the overall aesthetic is controlled at the company level, including the default formats, number of copies, so let's begin there. We'll jump over to our Design Manager, click File in the top left corner, go down to Company Information and Settings. Now first, for those of you who don't know, you can attach your logo optionally onto your documents from the Company Information window on the Logo tab, and you can see my simple logo there. There is an option immediately beneath the logo image that says Logo includes company contact information. Now, if your logo has your address, contact information, etc. already embedded within the image, that option will prevent Design Manager from printing all of that address, contact information, etc., as it will be redundant and utilize unnecessary space on the document. Clearly mine does not, so I have the option unchecked. Let's jump back to the Company tab, and we're going to click on the Advanced button on the right-hand side, which brings us to the Company Advanced Options window, conveniently to our Print tab. And a lot of the settings for printing, documents, etc. are found here. So let's go through them. First, we can see the Copies option. This only applies when you're sending a document directly to the printer and not to the Print Preview window. What do I mean by that? Let's jump over to our Proposal window, which we'll be spending a lot of our time. Grab one of our projects. We'll go ahead and reprint. Now, on the Reprint Proposal window, notice along my printer toolbar, I can see my direct to printer is highlighted or not depressed or pressed in. That means I'm going to use my Print Preview first. When that button is grayed out or depressed, as it is in this instance, it's going to go not to my Print Preview on my monitor, but directly to my print device. That's when the copies are applicable. Now, the vast majority of Design Manager users much rather print the document to the Print Preview window, but that doesn't mean you still don't have control over how many copies you want to print. Right from the printer icon in the top left, you can change your copies along the right-hand side, bottom corner, off from the Print Preview as well. Okay. Next, all of the styles or the formats that are available for each document. Now, these can be changed dynamically when printing or reprinting a proposal or invoice, but they're set globally for the purchase work orders, delivery tickets, statements, along with the quotes and orders and acknowledgments if you have the optional showroom module. We'll discuss each of these in much more detail later. The letterhead option. If you want to physically print the document on your company letterhead, which already has your company logo, address, etc., the letterhead option will prevent that information from appearing unnecessarily. In other words, Design Manager won't reprint your company name, address, phone number, etc. Now, this setting does assume that your letterhead information is on the top few inches of the physical paper, not along the sides, on the right side or left side, or at the bottom, etc. So I have proposals set for not using letterhead, while invoices are. So let's see the difference. Go back to our proposal, reprint again. And notice I do have my logo being displayed for me and the company information as well. So I'm not using the letterhead setting in this case. Same with one of the other formats on the proposal. Again, Design Manager is printing all of my company information for me. Now the invoice is set to use letterhead. So let's take a look at the difference. We'll go to our client invoices, existing tab, reprint one of our invoices. And here, Design Manager is not printing my company information. It's giving me all of that space. So when I physically print on the letterhead, Design Manager's not reproducing that information for us. So that's the letterhead setting, and it can be set independently for all of those various types of documents. Next, abbreviated header or abbreviated letterhead. This is used to maximize the amount of information that can be displayed on the document by only showing the company information on the first page of the document and much less information on subsequent pages. Let's take a look. So I have my purchase orders set for using the abbreviated letterhead. So we'll jump back to our project tab, over to project purchase orders and work orders. Let's grab one of our projects and we'll reprint one of our POs showing that feature. So on the first page, again, we're showing our company logo, the company address information, etc. And it does take up, a decent amount of the page real estate there. But on our subsequent pages, we're not showing that information. So we have much more of the page to display the specifications themselves, really maximizing the size of the document. And if you're printing on physical paper, the pages themselves. So that's the abbreviated letterhead setting. Very convenient. Next, we have the page X of Y. When this format is selected, you're not only going to see the total number of pages, but you'll see which page you are on out of that total. Let's look at that purchase order again, as that one did have multiple pages. We can see our page number says page 1 of 3, the total number of 3, and which page I'm currently on. 2 of 3, 3 of 3, etc. If the option is not selected, it would simply say the page that you're currently on, 1, 2, 3, etc., without the total. Collate. Collating, when you're printing directly to the printer and there's multiple pages on the document and yet you need multiple copies, collating will print page 1, 2, 3, 4 of the first, let's call it set, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 of the second total copy. Not using collate would print page 1 again, page 2 again, page 3 again. And again, that's only when going directly to the printer. Finally, the reference number option. This indicates whether or not to show you the unique Design Manager reference number on the document. Now, you might not want to confuse your client or your vendor, etc. Reference numbers do, however, make our lives easier when we're cross-referencing an item or component from the documents to the specifications themselves. So I've configured the proposals not to use the reference number while the other documents do. So let's take a look at the proposal example. So we can see I don't have any reference number information associated with all of my specifications. Now let's look at the invoice to contrast. Go over to accounting, client invoices existing, reprint our invoice. And here we can see we do show the reference number, small, right beneath each of the items themselves. Again, really for our internal usage. So you do have the ability to turn that off and on as it needed on each of the different documents available. Continuing to our right, we have our margins, and we have two sets of margins for when we're using Letterhead. So in the case I do want to print directly onto my letterhead, I need at least 2 inches so I don't overwrite my letterhead itself or the images I have on the letterhead, and the bottom margin. And then another pair for when we're not using letterhead. And I have this set to 1/3 of an inch, both the top and the bottom. So you can control those two sets of margins independently of one another. Finally, we have the bold item name option. On the print tab, what this does is when you're using the item name on your item window, Design Manager will always bold that text when printing your various documents. Let's quickly show how that works. Go back to our project. Oops, and we'll go to our specifications. Let's grab the Hilson project. And let's use our California King bed as an example. And you can see I have my item name and description utilizing that information, and more of the description itself right beneath it. And the same for a few of my other items as well, armchair, etc. Now, when we go to print the documents, let's say a proposal in our example, change that to the Hilsons. Oops. We can see I've created a proposal already for the master bedroom. And if we reprint, we can see, let's make our document a little bit larger there, that Design Manager automatically bolds the item name itself for us. And the remainder of the text is not bold. So that's an option that you can use. Great. Bold item name. Okay, now let's jump back to the style or formats. I've been using a few different formats in our demonstration so far where we're reviewing all the company printing settings, but let's take a moment to explore all of the formats in a bit more depth before moving forward. Let's look at the proposal and invoice formats first, as they share many of the same options. First off, you're going to see corresponding versions of the documents with the with deposit format, which we'll discuss shortly. Proposals have the most formatting options. You're going to see selections for specification sheets in multiple formats, bid specifications, tear sheets, etc. Now, bid specifications and specification sheets are very standardized, very important documents. They actually warrant their own webinar, which you can view on our YouTube channel, on our bid spec and specification documents as well. So we have a whole webinar dedicated just to those formats. So we'll skip them in our discussion today. Now we will review some of those other formats available on the proposal, obviously, shortly. So let's look at all the different proposal and invoice formats themselves, beginning with the residential. Now, the residential format is created using the Times New Roman font suite, and it's intended to have a soft, almost personal correspondence appearance. The company information and logo is displayed in the top left corner on that document. Now, I've configured our proposal for our Carter project using a variety of the different formats for us. So let's take a look at the residential format, which we can see under the style selection on our proposal and document window. For those of you who noticed, when I'm reprinting a proposal, as I said before, I can select any of the formats to reprint in any format that I desire. In fact, if I want to update the current selected style or format, I can use the update style selection as well to change it from residential to modern or residential with deposit, etc. Let's take a look. And there we go. So as I said, with company logo in the top left, along with all the company information, we're using the Arial font suite throughout. That's the residential format. And again, the invoice will look very similar in that sense. Next, we have the commercial formats. The commercial format uses the Arial font suite, and it has the classic grid columns for a traditional, almost business-to-business document appearance. And again, in this case, the company information and logo are in the top left of this style. So let's reprint Proposal 3 for the Carter's Pennington home, which is utilizing that commercial format. And here we go. And like I said, grid columns, we have our company information in the top left of the document, and we're using Arial throughout. Finally, the modern format. Now, the modern's my personal favorite, as it has the most contemporary appearance and utilizes the Calibri font suite. Only in the modern format is the company information shown at the bottom of the document for maximum space efficiency, while the logo is centered at the top of the document. So let's take a look at that format for Proposal 2 for the Carter's Pennington home. And here we go. So now we have the logo centered along the top, but the company information is stacked along the bottom. Again, maximizing page real estate there. And we're using that Calibri font suite in this case. That's the modern format. Great. Now, let's go back to our company advanced options. Now, unlike the proposal and invoices, where I said the format can be selected each time, for purchase and work orders, delivery tickets, along with client statements, the company setting on this window determines which format to be used. Note, the delivery ticket here does follow the purchase order settings, so we can simply use the purchase order document to demonstrate the available formats along with the statement. So the modern format, just like on the proposal and invoice, it's going to use the Calibri font while has the logo centered at the top. But in the case of the proposal and that delivery ticket, the company information is also going to be at the top underneath the logo. Let's take a look. Go to our purchase orders in that case. Let's grab one of our projects and we'll reprint. Notice, like I just said, on the reprint here, we don't have the option to select between the two. Those particular types of documents are only controlled at the company level. And if we reprint, logo centered along the top, but again, in this case, we are showing the company information right beneath it rather than at the bottom. But the suite itself looks just like our proposal and invoice as well. The statement also has a selection for modern and classic. And in the modern, very similar in the overall format. Let's take a look at the statement document. For those of you who don't know, if we go to our accounting tab and go to accounts receivable reports, we can find our statement document, which I've also conveniently attached to my favorites listing by using the add to favorite button, so I don't have to track it down each time. And if we go ahead and print a statement, we can see, again, same font suite, looking very similar in overall format to the purchase order itself, with our company logo at the top and the company information immediately beneath. So to contrast, we have the classic statements as well. The classic format on both the purchase order, delivery ticket, and statement. The classic uses the Arial font suite and has a similar structure as the commercial format of the proposal and invoice. with the company information being back in the top left. So let's take a look at those by saving our company settings and then reprinting our documents. Back to our purchase order. Here we go. So now we can see we're using the Arial and my company logo is back tucked in the top left with my company information immediately to the right. And same with the statement. We're now going to be using that Arial suite and putting our company information along the top. All of this personal preference to your company itself. Okay, now we've reviewed many of the formats overall. Let's focus on those with deposit versions of the proposal and invoice. Let's go back to our company information, advanced, and we can see again, each of the formats we just reviewed has another format or style that has with deposit. What these formats do is they change the columns being displayed in order to indicate to the client the appropriate deposit information on an item-by-item basis on the respective document. On the proposal documents, the with deposit format has columns for sales tax and deposit and won't show the unit price column regardless of any setting that we will review shortly. The deposit column on the proposal will always show the requested deposit amount for each item, and the total of that column will equal the requested deposit at the bottom of the document. So let's review our with deposit formats. Let's go back to our proposals. Now we'll go ahead and reprint. Let's take proposal 1 here and we'll switch this to, how about modern with deposit as our example. So here we see we have our description, the quantity. Now we're seeing the extended price, the tax, and the requested deposit amount. And if we scroll through, we can see that for all of our items. And in the totals region, our deposit gets summated along the right-hand side and matches the deposit requested amount at the bottom of that information. This is not showing the deposit received. This is the requested deposit amount. You can always reprint a proposal using the Show Deposits option, which will indicate the total deposits received, but not per item, just for the document at itself. Let's do so for comparison. So if we reprint, let's go back to our modern with deposit, and in this case, we will show actual deposits. Now, going to look very similar to the document we just printed. Again, we're seeing the deposit column, that's the requested amount on each item. But in our totals region, we now see the original proposal amount and any and all deposits that have been applied to that proposal at this point, effectively creating a de facto future amount due on the proposal itself. On the invoice, the with deposit format is going to show the deposit being applied to each item on that invoice. And again, this formats have the additional columns for sales tax, deposit, and balance for each item. Again, unit prices will never be displayed on those formats. So let's jump over to our client invoices, existing, and we'll go ahead and reprint. And let's use our modern with deposit and take a look at that invoice format. And here we go. Again, description, we're showing our picture in this case, quantity, price, the tax, the deposit that's actually being applied on a per item basis, and the current balance of that item. And we see that for all of our items. And then in our total region, we're going to summate all of the columns. We can see our deposit being applied, the total balance due of all of the items. In this case, we'll add in some freight and the balance due of the entire invoice itself. Further, for those of you who don't know, you can also reprint the invoice showing payments. And since we do have a payment applied here, if we reprint, let's do our modern with deposit and our show payment selection. Okay, we now see again, sales tax deposit, balance due of the items. And in the total region, same format, but here we're seeing each and every payment being applied to the invoice itself, and in this case, truly producing the actual balance due on that, that invoice. Now, in general, as deposits are so important to the design industry, these formats really help to communicate how much is being requested for each item, how the deposit ultimately gets applied on the invoice, etc. Very important documents and very convenient as well. Okay, now, when pricing isn't as important, we do have a relatively new format of the proposal, which is the modern no pricing. Now, this allows you to develop the design concept without showing any of the prices at a specific phase in the project development. Let's take a look at that. Jump back to our proposals, and we'll reprint our Carter's Pennington home proposal for the master bedroom. But let's use that new modern no pricing format. The modern no pricing is the only document that we have that does not show the pricing on the proposal documents. So there is not a residential no pricing, commercial no pricing. It's only in the modern overall format suite. So we can see, very similar to our original modern format, yet we're not showing any of the pricing information, just our design concepts listed out for the client. Very handy, and a common request that we've then implemented into our ProCloud, as we're always trying to put new features in as the industry dictates. Okay, modern no pricing format. So we've reviewed styles for the proposals, invoices, purchase orders, etc. We know that bid specifications and spec sheets have their own webinar, but I do want to focus on a few more, including the tear sheet document on the proposal. The tear sheet allows you to print a professional, dynamic presentation of all the desired items. You can print a proposal using the tear sheet format, or you can make a new tear sheet document for items that you've already proposed. Let's see how. Let's go back to our proposals and documents. Let's go to, how about the Carter's Brigantine Beach home. Now we see we have already created a proposal for the sofa chairs and bar stools in the modern format. But let's imagine I want to create tear sheets for all of these items as well. I can absolutely do so. I'm going to click Add. Let's change our name phase to, how about something very simple like tear sheets. Today's date is just fine, and we'll select the tear sheets style. Since I want to create the tear sheets for an existing proposal and the items included therein, I'm going to click my Show All option. Now I can see all of the items, including the ones even proposed previously, and I can see all of my items on Proposal 2. So I'm going to tag or select them and click OK. And here is our relatively new tear sheet document. We have our company logo. We have large, dynamic image of the items, and then very, very concise information about the item, the project and project name, the location, and the item description. Really focusing on the visual aspect of the items themselves. No pricing information here also. And then we can see 1 page per item. So a very nice, dynamic, professional looking tear sheet document that I can print, and I can even accept the document. And now I have a traditional proposal for my items and a tear sheet version as well. Okay. For our last area of discussion, let's review a few of the options that allow you to manipulate the format and information appearing on all of these different documents. Again, these settings are initially configured in our company advanced option on each of the pertinent tabs, such as the proposal, invoice, purchase, and work order. The purchase and work order settings do control delivery tickets and statements and other formats as well, while the proposal and invoice are just for those two documents themselves. I'll keep the from our company advanced options. All of our new projects then inherit all of these format settings and can be changed on a per project basis. So if we look at one of our projects, edit our Carter's Pennington Home, go to defaults, and here click our advanced markup, we can see nearly the exact same settings, which I can then change on a per project basis as well. So we'll close the company advanced options and we'll keep our project advanced options up for reference. Now, to demonstrate these features, I've configured the Carter's Pennington Home using many of the standard options, but we'll keep this up while looking at our proposal document, and I'll show you where each of these different options affect the document itself. So now let's reprint one of the Carter's proposals so we can review. Okay. And here's our proposal document, and we'll slide him over so we can review the options and how they affect the document itself. Okay, first, the proposal title. Now, by default, we're going to name this document proposal, but you could change that to estimate, quote, what have you, and that would literally change the title of the document itself, right on the printed version thereof. Show proposal name. Now, this is good for us. The proposal name is listed right next to the project code, but it may be confusing to the client. So you can absolutely turn that off so that I'm showing master bedroom proposal name, and you can see my proposal name there as well. Very convenient for us to cross-reference the proposal and indicate what's going to be included on that document itself. That goes hand in hand with the show project code. So we can see I'm showing the project code CAR01 right next to or right in front of the proposal name itself. The proposal number, I'm showing proposal number 1 for that project. And I do have the ability to turn that off as well. Again, very convenient for us to have the proposal number there, but if the client finds it confusing or you just don't like the aesthetic, it can be turned off. There's another option. Use the name as the number. Now, this setting will use the proposal name, in our case, master bedroom, in lieu of the unique proposal number. Obviously, you must have the show proposal number option selected or it won't show anything there. Now, this is particularly handy if you're coming from another system prior to Design Manager and you're reproducing proposals in Design Manager, or perhaps you simply have your own internal numbering system for your documents. So how does that work? Well, let's select the use name as number option. We'll save our project. Now I'm going to, let's edit proposal 3, change the format, and let's say I do have a prior numbering system. So I put that as my name or phase. And now I'm using my numbering system with my proposal name. So rather than Design Manager's proposal 0001, we're overriding that with our system as well. Very convenient, particularly for newer Design Manager users coming from a different system, and you want to maintain consistency during that transitional phase. Okay, now back to our project for review. Tuck that up here, proposal tab, and we'll reprint our proposal and back to our comparisons. Okay. Suppress location. What the suppress location option would do is prevent the location title and the location totals from appearing. Now, the items will still appear in that location code order that you've designated, but you'll simply not see the titles themselves. Suppress unit prices. The suppress unit price option would simply not display the unit price column. Now, remember that unit prices never show on the with deposit formats for space considerations, obviously, so that setting becomes of zero worth in those particular formats. But it's also important to note that if I do use the suppressed unit prices, that there is no gaining of space. The column will simply not appear there. It won't reallocate, making the description or something along those lines larger. It simply hides the column. Going hand in hand with our suppressed unit prices, we can see our unit to 4 decimal prices option. What that will do is that each of the unit prices won't have cents and tenths. It'll go out to 4 decimal places. Now, that gives just greater accuracy when we're calculating the unit price from the extended price divided by the quantity. Particularly handy or convenient or desirable for things like tile or other yardage typed products where there might be provided to you in increments of very unique pricing structure where it's actually provided by the vendor at a price or cost all the way out to 4 decimal places. So that option is there as well. Suppress designer signature. What that does is at the bottom of our proposal documents, we have both a signature line for the designer and a signature line or approval line for the client. Suppress designer signature will simply hide the designer signature and date, yet the client approval line will always appear, and that cannot be turned off. Remarks on a new page. This would take all of your remarks along with the signature lines and start them on a new page, regardless if there is plenty of room on the prior page, as in our example. Now, that's very convenient or very useful when you have long or detailed remarks and you don't want to split them over several pages. It'll just start them on their own page by themselves, allow the client to read them succinctly and sign right beneath. Show site address. You can optionally show or suppress the site address. In this case, in many cases, if the site is the same as the billing address, you may simply not want it to appear there, and you can use the suppress site address to turn that off. Suppress sales tax. When that option is selected, sales tax will never appear on the proposal document, even if tax will ultimately be collected. Some firms like to present the client with their pricing and markup design fees, etc., saying this is what everything is going to cost you, with perhaps a remark or the caveat or a contract stating that please note that sales tax will be included on the invoice. So here's what we're presenting, and don't forget that the government has their piece as well. Show email and website. When that is selected, we're going to show the company email and website from the company information and settings window, and you can again suppress that if desired. Finally, we have all of our various titles and styles of our non-merchandise component types. What do these do? Well, we can see I have my component type of freight titled or being displayed with the verbiage of freight, and I'm using the style of total, which takes all of the freight and includes it summated in the totals region. But I can change that in both cases. So I could change the title just on the document for the proposals themselves to, let's say, shipping, and perhaps I want to list that or show it for each of the various items. So the title will describe what the text is on the document, while the style shows where it will appear. And let's review those quickly. Combined takes that component type, freight, crating, what have you, and blends it in to the entire price of the item. So those additional charges are not broken out. Total, as we see, shows it in the totals region for all of the items on the proposal or invoice. While ignore simply does not show that, that component type at all. So if I want to present the client a proposal not including any freight, yet I still want to estimate it in my specifications, I can use the ignore to do so. Let's take a look at those various options. So first, we'll do combined, and the 120, the 1237.50 is going to be blended in to each of the items. So we'll save our project and we'll reprint. And now each of the items has correspondingly increased by their freight, and we no longer see the freight being listed. It's included in the totals of the items. Now, if we use the list option, this shows us the freight on a per item basis. So rather than blending it with the combined or summating it all with the totals, we see our freight price being shown right beneath each of the items. And lo and behold, now we've changed the text of freight to shipping. And we can see that for each of the items. So if the client ever wants to see a breakdown, rather than $10,000 of a lump sum of freight at the bottom of the proposal, you can select it to show the list option, and it'll break it out on a per item basis. And obviously we already saw how total works as well. Okay, a few more options here. Now, finally, the single item proposal and allow one proposal per item. These two settings, I do go into, they're more administrative settings, so I discuss in a lot greater detail in our project management course 1, proposals, where I discuss those two options. But in brief, what they do is single item proposal. That will allow you to select multiple items when making a proposal for the client, but it'll actually generate a unique proposal document for each one of them. So if I want to do a single item on every proposal, in other words, each proposal is one item, I can select them all at once, and Design Manager will craft a proposal document for each of them. While allow one proposal per item, that will prevent me from including an item on multiple proposals. If I never want to accidentally include an item on multiple or duplicate proposals, that'll prevent me from doing so. That also prevents you from doing what I just demonstrated with the tear sheet, on having tear sheets for an item and a proposal for an item. So be sure to note that aspect as well. And again, those are covered in a little bit greater detail in our Project Management 1 course on proposals. So we went through all of our proposal options. The invoice options are all very similar. I'll point out a few of them that are different, but we do have this pricing selection for each of our various component types. This is very important, and it's way out of the scope of our discussion today, but I do describe that in great detail in our accounting course 2, client invoices and billing reports, and to a smaller degree in our markups, discounts, and fees pricing webinar as well. So I do suggest reviewing particularly the accounting course 2 client invoices, as this pricing designation determines how Design Manager will calculate the default invoice price to your client, which of course we can all agree is very important. A few options here though. Let's go ahead and reprint one of our invoices. Existing, reprint, modern's just fine. Okay, great. So we saw many of these options already. One that stands out that's only available on the invoice options is the show ship to address. So on the case of the invoice, you can show the billing, the site, and shipping addresses all independently of one another. Obviously the billing address always appears, but on the invoice, the site and ship to can be optionally displayed. We also see several selections for just time-based options. Show time supplement, show time details, and show starting and ending times. Now, these are also described in great detail on another webinar, our time billing webinar, where I go into how each of those can be used to convey or present all of your important billable time to your clients. So I dedicated an entire webinar just to include such topics, so we can leave those off of today's scope. And finally, our purchase and work order tab, the fewest amount of selections here. Notice that our styles are limited to everything excluding merchandise and time. You can change the purchase order title as well as you could on the proposal selection, but our styles have only options for list, total, and ignore. Why? Well, components, there's nowhere to combine a component. They're always going to be displayed. So I can either list them or show them, or I can take that particular component type and total it at the bottom or ignore it. So if I have freight with all of my merchandise and don't want to show on a purchase order, I can select it to ignore as well. And with that, brings us to our end of our somewhat lengthy discussion on Design Manager's available document formats. And we saw that Design Manager Pro Cloud has several different document formats available for all of your purchase orders, invoices, delivery tickets, statements, etc., all of which can be further customizable to you and your client's needs. We discussed these formats. We displayed types of charges differently on the documents, and we reviewed a multitude of those more advanced settings as well. And with that, I thank you for joining the discussion today, and I hope you attend another of our free webinars in the near future. Take care.